So hello and welcome back yet again. We are back with Ivanhoe, where the entire last chapter we got a little bit more of Isaac and his daughter Rebecca. Was that her name? God, I hope that was her name. I'm gonna feel really dumb if that's not her name. Rebecca, yes. Oh, and yeah, I actually probably should have read this chapter yesterday because again, I'm behind. But, that's kind of the way the cookie crumbles. And 90% of me is still kind of afraid that the minute I actually start reading this, my phone that I am using to record is going to start ringing because I'm waiting on a phone call. But I also want to get this chapter done for you tonight. Also, just totally side note, there is yet more of Dragon's Dawn that is up on Patreon if you are interested in a much older book that has disappeared from my YouTube channel. And I think I'm going to put up, because I didn't know this about Patreon, but you can actually become a free Patreon member. And I'll throw out some videos every now and then on the free membership tier, and then you can kind of see, granted, they're older videos, but they will be there. I think I'm going to put the very first short story that I ever read, which is the survey, PERN, um, that kind of describes the discovery of the planet. I think I'm going to put that up as a free video. So, just if you're kind of interested, you can go suss out the vibe. That's a weird thing to say. I don't think I've ever said that in my life, but you can suss out the vibe and check that out. The link is in my channel page. You can just click on it and it will take you there if you're interested. If not, that's also fine. Anyway, none of that has anything to do with Ivanhoe, which is a public domain book, which means it can be here on YouTube. So we're going to jump in and see if maybe now that our disinherited knight has paid his debts, if maybe we're going to go on to day 2 of what could be Mortal Kombat. Cue the Mortal Kombat music here. But as always, we're going to be reading from another book that I've never read, or poem that I've never read, or anything like that, that opens up chapter 11 of Ivanhoe by Sir Walter Scott. First outlaw. Stand, sir, and throw us that you have about you. If not, we'll make you sit and rifle you. Speed. Sir, we are undone. These are the villains that all the travellers do fear so much. Val. My friends. First out. That's not so, sir. We are your enemies. Second out. Peace, we'll hear him. Third out. Aye, by my beard, will we, for he's a proper man. Looking at how this was put together, I think it's from a play, but it is from Two Gentlemen of Verona. That was a very weird quote at the beginning, but we're going to roll with it as we jump into chapter 11 of Ivanhoe by Sir Walter Scott. The nocturnal adventures of Gurth were not yet concluded. Indeed, he himself became partly that of that mind when, after passing one or two straggling houses which stood on the outskirts of the village, he found himself in a deep lane running between two banks overgrown with hazel and holly, while here and there a dwarf oak flung its arms all together across the path. The lane was, moreover, much rutted and broken up by the carriages which had recently transported articles of various kinds to the tournaments, and it was dark, for the banks and bushes intercepted the light of the harvest moon. From the villages were heard the distant sounds of revelry, mixed occasionally with loud laughter, sometimes broken by screams and sometimes by distant music. All of these sounds, intimating the disorderly state of the town, crowded with military nobles and their dissolute attendants, gave Girth a bit of uneasiness. The lady was right, he said to himself. By heaven and St. Dunstan, I would I were safe at my journey's end with all of this treasure. Here are such numbers, I will not say of errant thieves, but of errant knights and errant squires, errant monks and errant minstrels, errant jugglers and errant jesters, that a man with a single merk would be in danger, much less a poor swineherd with a whole bag of zecchins. Would I were out of the shade of these infernal bushes, that I might at least see any of St. Nicholas's clerks before these miscreants spring upon my shoulders. Accordingly, Girth hastened his pace in order to gain the open common to which the lane led, but was not so fortunate as to accomplish this object. Just as he had obtained the upper end of the lane, where the underwood was the thickest, 4 men sprung upon him, even as his fears anticipated, 2 from each side of the room, and they seized him so fast that resistance, if practicable, would have been too late. "Surrender your charge," said one of them. "We are the deliverers of the Commonwealth, who ease every man of his burden." "You should not ease me of mine so lightly," muttered Girth, whose surly honesty could not be tamed even by the pressure of violence. "Had I but in my power to give 3 strokes in its defense." "We shall see presently," said the robber, and then, speaking to his companions, added, "Bring along the knave. I see he would have his head broken as well as his purse cut, and so be let the blood in 2 veins at once." Girth was hurried along agreeably to this mandate, and having been dragged somewhat roughly over the bank on the left-hand side of the lane, found himself in a straggling thicket which lay between it and the open common. He was compelled to follow his rough conductors into the very depths of this cover, where they stopped unexpectedly in an irregular open space, free in great measure of trees, and on which, therefore, the beams of the moon fell uninterrupted from boughs and leaves. Here his captors were joined by 2 other persons, apparently belonging to this gang. They had short swords by their sides and quarter-staves in their hands, and Girth could now see that all 6 wore visors, which rendered their occupation a matter of no question, even if their proceedings had left it in doubt. "What money hast thou, churl?" said one of the thieves. 30 seconds of my own property," said Girth. "A forfeit! A forfeit!" shouted the robbers. "A saxton hath served 30 zecchins, and returned sober from a village. An undeniable and unredeemable forfeit of all he has about him." "I was hoarding it to purchase my freedom," said Girth. "Thou art an ass," said one of the thieves. 3 quarts of double ale had rendered thee as free as thy master, I, and freer too, if he is a Saxon like you." "A sad truth," said Girth. "But if these same 30 zecchins will buy my freedom from you, unloose my hands and I will pay you." "Hold," said one of the thieves, who seemed to exercise some authority over the others. "This bag which thou bearest, as I can feel through thy cloak, contains more coin than you have told us of." "It is the good knight, my master's," said Girth, "of which assuredly I would not have spoken a word, had you been satisfied with working your will upon my own property." "You're an honest fellow," said the robber. "I warrant thee, and we worship not St. Nicholas so devoutly, but what thy 30 zecchins may escape, if you deal uprightly with us. Meanwhile, render up thy trust for a time." and saying that, he took from Gurth's breast the large leather pouch in which the purse given him by Rebecca was enclosed, as well as the rest of the zecchins, and then he continued his interrogation. "And who is your master?" "The disinherited knight," said Gurth. "Whose good lance," said the robber, "won the prize in today's tourney? What is his name? What is his lineage?" "It is his pleasure," said Gurth, "that they be concealed, and from me assuredly you'll learn none of that." "What is your name and your lineage?" "To tell you that might reveal my master's." "Thou art a saucy groom," said the robber, "but of that anon. How comes thy master by this gold? Is it of his inheritance, or by what means has he obtained it?" "By his lance," said Gurth. "These bags contain the ransom of 4 good horses and 4 good suits of armor." "And how much is in it?" 200 zecchins." "Only 200?" said the bandit. "Your master hath dealt liberally by the vanquished, and put them to a cheap ransom. Name those who paid the gold." And so Gurth did. "The armor and the horse of the Templar Brian de Bois Guilbert, at what ransom were they held? Thou seemest thou cannot deceive me." "My master," said Gurth, "will take naught from the Templar save his life. They are on terms of mortal defiance, and cannot hold courteous intercourse." "Indeed," said the robber, and he paused long after he said that. "And what wert thou now doing at Ashby with this much money in your custody?" "I went there to render to Isaac," said Gurth, "the price of a suit of armor with which he fitted my master for the tournament." "And how much did you pay Isaac? Methinks, to judge by weight, there is still 200 zecchins in this pouch." I paid to Isaac," said Gurth. "I paid to Isaac 80 zecchins, and he gave me 100 in lieu thereof."
"What?"
said all of the robbers.
"Darest thou trifle with us, that thou tells such lies?"
"What I tell you," said Gurth, "is as true as the moon is in heaven. You will find the just sum in a silken purse within the leather pouch, and separate from the rest of the gold."
"Think, man," said the captain. "You speak of a Jew, an Israelite, as unapt to restore gold as the sand of his desires is to return a cup of water which the pilgrim spills out."
"There's no more mercy in them," said another of his bandits, "than an unbribed sheriff." "It is exactly as I say, though," said Gurth.
"Give me a light," said the captain. "I will examine this said purse, and if it be as this fellow says, then the bounty is little less miraculous than the stream which relieved his fathers in the wilderness."
And so a light was procured, and the robber proceeded to examine the purse. The others crowded around him, and even 2 who had hold of Gurth relaxed their grip while they stretched their necks to see what was going on in the search. Helping himself to their negligence by a sudden exertion of strength and activity, Gurth shook himself free of their hold and might have escaped, could he have resolved to leave his master's property behind. But this was not his intention. He wrenched a quarterstaff from one of the fellows, struck down the captain, who was altogether unaware of what was going on, and had well nigh repossessed himself of the pouch and the treasure. But the thieves, however, were too nimble for him, and again secured both the bag and the trusty Gurth.
"Knave,"
said the captain as he stood,
Thou hast broken my head, and with other men of our sort thou wouldst fare far worse for your insolence. But you shall know your fate right now. First, let us speak of your master. The knight's matters must go before the squire's according to the due order of chivalry. Stand fast in the meantime, and if you move again, you shall have that will make you quiet forever. Comrades, he said, addressing his gang, this purse is embroidered with Hebrew characters, and I might well believe this man's tale is true. The errant knight, his master, must needs pass us toll-free. He is too like ourselves for us to make booty of him, since dogs should not worry dogs when wolves and foxes are to be found all around.
Like us, said one of the gang. I should like to hear how that's made good.
Fool, said the captain, is he not poor and disinherited as are we? Doth he not win his substance at the point of a sword as we do? Has he not beaten Front de Boeuf and Malvision, even as we would beat them if we could? Is he not enemy to life and death of Brian de Bois Guilbert, who we have reason to fear? And were all of this otherwise, would you have us show a worse conscience than an unbeliever?
Nay, that were a shame, said another fellow. And yet, when I served in the band of stout old Gadelaine, we had no such scruples of conscience. And this peasant, he too, I warrant, is to be dismissed. Just 1 minute. Okay, sorry about that. Had a neighbor come over with an offer of a desk. I'm not going to say no to that. Where was I? We were just having a fight and deciding if Girth can be set free.
Not if thou can scathe him, said the captain. Here, fellow, he said, addressing Girth, canst thou use the staff, which you grabbed so quickly?
I think, said Girth, that I should be able to reply to that question.
No, you gave me a round knock, said the captain. If you do as much for this man, then you will pass scot-free. And if you do not, why, by my faith, as thou art such a sturdy knave, I think I must pay thy ransom myself. Take up the staff, Miller, he said, and keep your head. And do you let the others let this fellow go. Give him a staff. There is light enough to lay on a load by.
And so, Girth and this Miller, these two champions, being armed with quarterstaves, stepped forward into the center of the open space in order to have the full benefit of the moonlight. The thieves, in the meantime, laughing and crying to their comrade, "Miller, beware of your toll dish." Miller, on the other hand, holding his quarterstaff in the middle and making it flourish around his head after the fashion which the French call faire de mouler, said boastfully, "Come on, churl, an thou dare. You will feel the strength of a miller's thumb."
"If thou be'st a miller," said Girth, undaunted, making his weapon play around his head with just the same amount of dexterity, "thou art doubly a thief, and as a true man, I bid you defiance."
And saying this, the two men closed together, and for a few minutes they displayed great equality in strength, courage, and skill, intercepting and returning the blows of their adversary with rapid dexterity, while from the continued clatter of their weapons, a person at a distance might have supposed that there were at least 6 people fighting. Less obstinate, and even less dangerous combats have been described in good heroic verse, but the combat of Girth and the Miller must remain unsung for want of a sacred poet to do justice to it. Yet, though quarterstaff play be out of date, What we can in prose we'll just have to do for these bold champions. Long they fought equally, until the miller began to lose temper at finding himself so stoutly opposed, and at hearing his laughter of his companions, who, as usual in such cases, were enjoying this greatly. This was not a state of mind favorable to the noble game of the quarterstaff, which, in ordinary cudgel play, the utmost coolness is needed, and it gave Gurth, whose temper was steady, though surly, the opportunity of acquiring a decided advantage, in availing himself of which he displayed great mastery. The miller pressed furiously forward, dealing blows with either end of his weapon alternating, and striving to come up to half-staff distance, while Gurth defended himself against the attack, keeping his hands about a yard asunder, and covering himself by shifting his weapon with great celerity, so as to protect his head and his body. And thus did he maintain the defensive, making his eye, foot, and hand keep time, until, observing his antagonist to lose wind, darted the staff at his face with his left hand, and, as the miller attempted to parry the thrust, slid his right hand all the way down to his left, and with the full swing of the weapon struck his opponent on the left side of the head, who instantly measured his length upon the green grass. "Well and yeomanly done!" shouted all of the robbers. "Fair play in England forever! The Saxton has saved both his purse and his hide, and Miller has met his match." "You may go your own way, my friend," said the captain, addressing Gurth in special confirmation of the general voice, "and I will cause 2 of my comrades to guide you by the best way to your master's pavilion, and to guard you from night walkers that might have less tender consciousness than we do, for there is many one of them upon the amble tonight. Take heed, though," he said. "Remember, thou hast refused to tell thy name, and asked not what ours was, nor endeavored to discover what it is. Because if you make such an attempt to find out who we are, you will come by worse fortune than has ever befallen you." Gurth thanked the captain for his courtesy, and promised to pay attention to his warning. 2 of the outlaws, taking up their quarterstaves, and telling Gurth to follow close behind, walked roundly forward along a bypath which traversed the thicket and the broken ground near it. On the very edge of the thicket, 2 men spoke to his conductors, and, receiving an answer in a whisper, they withdrew into the wood, and they suffered all 3 to pass unmolested. This circumstance induced Gurth to believe both that the gang was strong in numbers, and that they were obviously keeping regular guards around their place of rendezvous. When they arrived on the open hearth, where Gurth might have had some trouble in finding his road, the thieves guided him straight forward to the top of a little hill, where he could see spread out before him in the moonlight the palisades of the lists, the glimmering pavilions pitched at either end, with the pennons which adorned them fluttering in the moon, and from which could be heard the hum of song with which the sentinels were beguiling the night watch. This is where the thieves stopped. "We will go with you no further," they said. "It were not safe that we should. Remember the warning you have received. Keep the secret of what happened to you tonight, and you will have no room to repent of it. Neglect what is now told you, and even the Tower of London will not protect you against our revenge." "Good night to you, kind sirs," said Gurth. "I shall remember your orders, and trust that there is no offense in wishing you a safer and more honest trade in the future." And thus they parted, the outlaws returning in the direction that they had come, and Gurth proceeding to the tent of his master, who, notwithstanding the injunction he had received, communicated the entire adventure of the evening with him. The Disinherited Knight was filled with astonishment, no less at the generosity of Rebecca, by which, however, he resolved he would not profit, than of that of the robbers, to whose profession such a quality seemed completely foreign. The knight's course of reflection upon these circumstances was, however, interrupted by the necessity of taking rest, which the fatigue of the day and the propriety of refreshing himself for tomorrow's encounter alike made indispensable. So, our Disinherited Knight, therefore, stretched himself for repose upon a rich couch with which the tent was provided, and faithful Girth, extending his hardy limbs upon a bearskin which formed a sort of carpet in the pavilion, laid himself across the opening of the tent, so that no one could enter without first awakening him. And that is the end of the chapter. Sorry it got a little interruption there, but hey, I'm not going to complain too much because it means I'm getting a desk. And that probably is what I'm going to put my computer on instead of the folding table that it's been on for the last 5 years. That might be a good thing. Anyway, that was a good chapter. I think we just met Robin Hood and his group of merry men. It was a little obscure in parts. It's always hard to tell who's speaking, which is why I try to do voices, even if it doesn't always succeed. But yeah, I think we just met Robin Hood. Interesting. I still think that the knight is Ivanhoe, and I have been promised that there is romance coming, so we're going to keep an eye out for it. Personally, I'm hoping for a romance between Ivanhoe and Rebecca, but I feel like it's probably going to be between Ivanhoe and Rowena. Anyway, thank you as always for listening. I hope that you enjoyed that chapter, and I will see you tomorrow.